Okay, so yesterday morning, I got up around, I think it was like 4:30, and I fed my dogs and then went over to my brother's house to feed his, or to potty his. And on the way over there, um, there were a couple things that happened. There was a song that started when I was pulling out of the driveway at our house, and by the time I got over to their road, I mentioned that there was a Twin Flame song that came on the radio, and when I looked at the odometer, there was 11:11. It was kind of broken up, but it was still there in a couple spots together, and so of course those two things got my attention. Since I was close to their house, I figured I would go ahead and pull in the garage and finish listening to the song before I went in and let the dogs out. When I got over there, because it was so gray outside and cloudy, the radio switched off and said it was acquiring satellite signal, whatever. So it's like, lost my song. So I went in, got the dogs, and put them outside, and found the song on Spotify and listened to it again that way, all the way through. And then on the way back home, as I was pulling across the main road that they're off of, another song he's connected to came on the radio, and I looked at the odometer at that point, and it was like 71.7, and so I was that of course being a Twin Flame number, for some reason, it's been one that keeps popping out as well. So I had all those things, and then when I got home, I told my cousin about it, and it was after 6, because yesterday was after 6, today was 4:30. So I stopped and sent my cousin a message, because it's easier to send messages than to write it all down in my journal at that point. Because I like to keep track of the weird synchronicities as I encounter them along the way. But I tell her about it, and I told her I watched this video before I went to bed, and the guy in the video was talking about 333 and 11:11, and talking about divine alignment in connection to particularly those numbers, but any other synchronicities as well. And I told her that when I paused that video, it was like right at 4 minutes and 56 seconds. It's like, because of course, right? So as I send the message to her, it's 6:54. So of course I take a picture of that and send that to her, because she's an hour behind us, so slight time difference, and she probably wouldn't have noticed it otherwise, obviously, because it was on my end. So I sent that to her, and then I went back to bed for a little while, because I wasn't ready for the day yet. Well, I was thinking, since there was like so much in a short span of time right there, I was feeling pretty good. And when I went back to bed, I didn't think about, my normal morning routine. I mean, I was still going to do everything that I normally do, but I didn't think about needing to do it before I checked my phone and saw that there was like parental drama going on. So I'd had a message from my mom at like 10 till 9 asking if I could come with my grandma to the hospital. And it wasn't take my grandma to the hospital, and sometimes my grandma has driven herself over there. These sisters ideally like that to not happen very often, but they also admit that she is still capable right now. So, and if she doesn't ever get to drive, then she won't be able to drive anymore. So it's like, I wasn't really sure if my mom was just wanting me to escort her along the way. That rarely happens, because I've gone over there with the intention of just allowing my grandma to drive and just being there in case she needs anything, as per request of my aunts, and she just let me drive. So that's usually the way it plays out. But I did not respond to that message at that point in time because I was not ready to deal with my family, and I wasn't really ready to get up either. When I was ready to get up, it was like 10:30, and I looked at my phone, and aside from that message, there was a couple more from my mom, and one was a little side note about putting some hamburger in the freezer before it went bad, since she just bought it at the store and then had to go back to the hospital. And then the other one was another message about bringing my grandma to the hospital. And the last message she sent me, I think, was after 9:30 sometime. But at 9:18, my dad had sent me a message, and mind you, he doesn't text me every day, mainly because he knows I probably won't respond, because he's notorious for sending me a bunch of junk that I want no part of, and have told him many times not to send me. So 9:18, he sends me a message saying, you need to call your mother. I was annoyed anyway. Well, at 9:30, the dogs had started barking because I'd opened the window in my room because it was hot, and it was real nice out yesterday. So yesterday morning was like in the 50s. And yeah, my room, it doesn't matter if the air conditioning is on or the heater is on. If it's a 68 to 70 in the house, my room will usually end up something like 75 to 80. And it doesn't matter which of those two is the case. Doesn't matter if it's the heat's on or the air is on, my room gets that hot anyway. So I opened the window, and then the dogs started barking at 9:30, so I opened the door, and I still wasn't ready to get up at that point in time. So basically rolled over after I did that and dozed off for a little bit again. Well, at 10:30, when I was dealing with my phone finally, I was sending my mom a message, and my dad walks down the hallway and says, you need to call your mother. It's like, anytime he speaks to me, I'm just kind of like, shut up and go away. I don't say it, but that's the whole feeling every single time, especially when I'd already seen his message, and it was just kind of like, whatever, and I sent the messages to my brother and was showing him the stupid, aggravating crap that was going on already. Then when I went about getting ready for the day, it was fine, and I did my normal routine where it's a daily effort. I will sage myself and then use a couple different intention sprays, and then put all the rocks on, especially on days I deal with the family. I go, full up, but I had to go to the hospital today, so I made sure I had everything again. But it was just really aggravating, and the whole day was just a pain in the ass, and it was heavy. I felt off, and even did a video, and felt a little grumpy. But when I rewatched the video last night, because I always watch them to make sure everything goes through all right, and there's no sound glitches. Like, I've had a couple days, mainly when I was skating, where it was like super glitchy, and ended up just deleting them. So I always try to watch them to make sure there's none of that. And I watched the video over at my brother's house, and when I was talking to him, it's like, man, I'm just really exhausted today. It's like, I don't know what my deal is. Wiped out, just too much family. And of course, I was at the hospital longer than I had wanted to be when I finally got there. Which, by the way, after my dad and his multiple you need to call your mom, blah, blah, blah. He ended up taking my grandma. So it's like, do I really even need to go? But it was basically there was already the coercive effort to get me there anyway, just because they thought I should be there. Yeah. They don't care if I don't come every day. Well, they would prefer it if I did, but if I'm not going to, they're not going to be difficult about it unless there's something that my mom just deems as a crisis and worthy of me being there yesterday, kind of a thing. And then she will annoy me and my brother to death. And as I've said, we're just going back and forth with who's the bigger disappointment. So, yeah. And neither one of us cares to be that anymore. We spent all of our lives growing up being manipulated, and since we've been on our own little healing paths, we've realized where a lot of that comes in at, which is exactly our parents. And so we have much firmer boundaries than we ever have, and they don't like it. So yeah. Anyway, I watched the video, and then, because I like watching them over there because that way it lets their dogs have more time outside of the crates before I have to go back home. And when I left that time, I was just like, you know what, I'm so tired. But I got home and I had this feeling, it's like, maybe I won't post that one. And so I thought about not. And I actually deleted the video from my computer. I mean, it went to the recycle bin, but it was still there technically. It took me a couple minutes to find it when I had to go back to it. But I deleted it and stopped the process, and then I went and took a shower to kind of get all that out of my system. And while I was in the shower, I felt this sense that maybe I should go ahead and post it after all. And it just, it wasn't a spectacular video or anything, but I made the connection that I was in a high space after all the stuff in the early morning hours, and then when I went to sleep, I neglected my usual bedtime process to go to bed in a good mood, because then you wake up in a good mood if you are able to line that up. So I realized that it was completely on me. I goofed that up because I didn't prioritize my getting ready to deal with the family. So then by the time I got to my process, it was already too late and the energy vampires had latched on already. So it's like, so I felt like I would go ahead and post it. And I did, and made note of the fact that I realized that when I was done, that, that was, that's what happens if I start the day one way and then go back to sleep for a while and then deal with family before I get my daily process in. And that's, sage daily whenever I'm around my parents, and there's multiple, I won't go in the room with them without the obsidian earrings and usually the red jasper necklace. I try to load up as much as possible if I'm going to be around them, just because they're just so draining. But, so I posted that, and then I was going to try to go to bed early. When I got back home, it was like 9, quarter after 9 maybe, or maybe 9:30, somewhere between then. And I was ready to go to bed, but I knew I had to take a shower and get that ickiness out of my system. So I did that, and then I decided to go ahead and put the video up after all. And when I finally did go to bed, I crashed hard. And I had this really vivid dream where I brought Gracie over to our house. And, like I normally would if I picked her up from school. I take her over to our house, and I'm feeling that energy drain still, and I tell her that I'm going to go take a shower, and then when I'm done, she needs to, and she always argues about it and doesn't want to do it at first. And I was like, look, I know after today I feel like crap from all the heavy energies that I've been around, and I know that you have the same inclination to pick up the heavy energies that I do, so you need to do this as well. And went on to, after that, she was agreeable to it, which that's usually the case. She always feels better after. Hey, quit it. Taz. Dog licking the seat. He licks everything. He licks the floor. He licks feet. He licks my pants. I hate it when he licks my pants. Or any clothes in general. He licks my shirt when I'm here in the car periodically. But yeah, because Gracie is sensitive to the energies as well. And you're awful jingly. That's one thing my brother and I have been talking about recently. Like, I told him about the dream, and he said that since they've been away from mom and dad the past few days, she's a whole different kid. It's like, I know. It's like, I get along with her great if mom and dad aren't around. It's like, when they're around, it's hit and miss. And yeah, so I know that energy thing is relevant on that end. I mean, I have this intention spray that it's like for happiness. I don't remember what else in it. I got it from Inner Path. And I one day she was arguing with her parents about something, and I just went and got it and walked in and sprayed her, and she just was stunned. And then I said, "This is happiness. You can only be happy now." And she just started giggling, and then the whole thing made it all better. She was getting along with everybody after that point. So yeah, it's kind of fun. But yeah, so this morning, my process, I got up at like 4:30 this morning and fed my dogs, these hooligans. Hi, Tazzy. I get it. And their sister that's napping. And then I went over and pottied my brother's dogs. So yesterday, okay, there's so many layers to this. It's hard for me to keep up with myself. Another thing that happened yesterday, I don't even remember all the details around the drama with getting me over to the hospital, but I did end up going to the hospital for a little while. Before I went that way, I noticed that since I've been parking this thing in the garage, since the other vehicle's not been in there, and because I've been making these trips in the middle of the night, or in the early morning hours, I noticed yesterday when I went home to get these guys before our walk that there was oil on the floor. It's like, crap. And I sent my parents a message in it's just the group with me and them conversation. And I said, we might need to get this looked at, because it was 2 days of parking it in the garage. And I mean, it wasn't a huge puddle, but it was enough of a puddle that, we were told like a year and a half ago or better that it had a slow leak. And obviously that's not important enough to get fixed. So there's like oil stains on the driveway, but yeah, who cares, right? This morning I went over to my brother's house, and as I was backing out, they have this old carpet that they didn't know what else to do with. So they just threw it in the middle of the garage floor. So I was parking on it, not really paying attention to it until I backed out this morning, and it's like, oh, is that oil on the rug? And then what is the rug there for? So I sent my brother a message this afternoon to ask about that while I was thinking about it. But it started me on this whole process. And first, when I was on my way over to the hospital, reason I went so easily yesterday was because I wanted to stop at CVS and get a box of hair dye that I knew that they had. Obviously I haven't done that yet, but we'll get there. So I wanted to get a box that I knew that, or this color that I knew that they had. And so I did that before I went. And then I went over, when I was going through this 4-way stop, I had stopped, and when it was my turn, when I tried to go, it was like the car didn't want to go all the way. And I hit the accelerator, and it's just kind of like, and then it went. It's like, that's not good. So when I got to CVS, I sent them a message and was like, we should probably get this thing looked at. And my uncle has a friend who is a mechanic, so he's got his own little shop in his garage, or in his barn out behind the house. So my dad sent him a message and was dealing with that, right? So I get to the hospital, and then like they have, he's got to go to the bathroom. My grandpa's got to go to the bathroom, so they have a couple nurses come in, and all the rest of us leave. We go to the conference area. And I'm trying to behave and not stay detached from my family, right? I'm trying to stay detached. That's the goal anytime I'm around my family. So, my dad and my grandma were there, and we're getting ready to leave. And before they did, my dad got up and went over to the bathroom. And when he's on his way to the bathroom, he says, well, I'll give you Scott's number and you can just link up with him and get it all figured out. It's like, no. It's like, we're going to have to coordinate everything anyway. You've already got the conversation going. Just continue it. Because this is technically theirs still. So, yeah. So that was a whole thing. But he got like really pissed off that I would put in the request that it stay his problem. The reason I spent so much time with that issue this morning was, I was thinking about, it's like, it's no big deal. I mean, I've dealt with getting cars into mechanics and stuff before, and the guy that we take stuff to now, I like him. He's a good guy. So, no problem. But he already had it started. And the thing is, if you take over anything from my dad, then it's going to be your task thereon, and he will never do anything again, right? So there are certain things like mowing, and fixing electrical stuff, since he was an electrician by trade. Certain things, it's like, I will not touch folding towels. He will fold towels if he is sitting in the living room and there's a basket of them right there. So the very little bit that he does to contribute on that end, it's like, I'm not getting in the middle of that, so he just lets me have it all the time, because that's how it works. So that was one of those things with the car, and you already had the conversation started. It's yours. Keep it. We're all going to have to coordinate anyway. So yeah, we'll figure it out. But when I was over at my brother's this morning and I thought I saw oil on the rug, then, I was trying to figure out why they had the rug there and if he'd told me anything about it before, because I couldn't remember. And I think he did, but yeah, I still wanted to ask since I thought the car had leaked on it. But I get back home and it becomes this whole freaking thing. And next thing I know, I'm there crying again because it's what I do. And, I'm processing through how, going back to the issue where my dad became one of the bullies when I was little, because he just thought I was acting like a brat at a time I was starting to get bullied at school, and he just contributed to it rather than trying to figure out anything that was going on, right? So, and my mom she thought it was funny, so she just kind of went along with it too. And no, they wouldn't see it as bullying, but that's essentially what it was, because, it's name calling and, talking about how difficult I am and all that crap. But it started this whole thing, and I was thinking about how, when I mentioned it in the hospital room, and I said, well, it's had a slow leak for a while, And my mom's like, yeah, but that's nothing. It's like, so that's not something we need to maybe get looked at somewhere along the line in case it has become more than just a slow leak. And then I was thinking about, if trying to go through the freaking stop sign and the car's trying to stall on me or whatever it's doing. And it's like, I can say confidently that if I went somewhere like downtown, fairgrounds, or whatever, and it did that, they'd probably freak out if the car died on me and probably be pissed that I was there anyway. But it's like, there's still, it's not important enough for it to be resolved beforehand. And when I had my Vibe, I freaking loved that thing, and I was diligent about getting it in for all of the routine services and all that stuff. And I'm confident I mentioned the Vibe on here before. The Vibe ended up, after I took a bunch of money out of my retirement to help my ex and I move to Alabama, then he couldn't assist me with making the payments when I was trying to get a job down there, and the car ended up repoed eventually. I had talked to the company I was making payments through, and they said I could make, $200 payments in like every week when I first started getting paid, because it was like a daycare job. It was less than $10 an hour. They said I could pay a couple hundred every couple of weeks and it would be okay. Mind you, I had my TBI and everything, so I just accepted that was okay. And so I made like 6 payments back to back every paycheck I got, which was like every other week, to try to stay up to date on that stupid car payment. And when I left Alabama we moved down there in 2015, and that fall was when I moved back the first time. And in January, my car got repoed because they said I hadn't made any payment on it. It's like, because I did. But I was kind of at a point where I was just, it's like life seemed to keep giving me a bunch of shit. And so I just took it rather than putting forth the effort to show that I had made payments. It just wasn't a big, like, I think it was like $397 that I needed to make all at once. So my little smaller payments didn't count. They just applied them to the principal or whatever. It's like, well, fuck. So my car got repoed, and I mean, it ended up working out okay, because then I still had, my ex had 3 vehicles at one point. And, well, I mean, the problem with that was when he got the 3rd vehicle, he begged me that we should go get a car with the tax check rather than using the tax check to fix the car that was in the driveway stranded. And it's like, it literally doesn't matter what I say. You're going to do what you want. So just leave me out of it and fucking do what you want, right? So he got another vehicle. And either way, I was still able to drive something, but it wasn't mine. And it, like, ever since that car left, that broke my heart. And it was big. I've been thinking about it a lot the past couple days, obviously, with this whole ordeal. But like, when I got that car, I was like super proud of it too, because it was one that, I did the research on it, and granted, it ended up that they had mislabeled some things online. Like they said it had heated seats, it did not, and there was something else on that end. But like everything else, it's like I did the research on cars for a while. I got it when I was at my job at the group home. And then, I was like on the ball with that thing. It's like when I was with my ex, mind you, the reason I was able to get into that relationship was because I'd gotten to a point in my own life where I felt like shit about myself, and that was the only reason I was able to get into that relationship. Like otherwise, there was so many red flags, and I thought I deserved them. So if it had been any other point other than when it was, it would not have happened. But at that point, I'd gotten to a place where I needed my dad or my brother to say something about, are you sure about this, dude? And neither one of them would. My brother at that point, he was in the Air Force, and he wasn't around very much, so he felt like he didn't really have any room to say anything, even though he said he admits that he did not like him from the get-go. But he didn't say anything, and then my dad wouldn't say anything, and it's come up that they were afraid to piss me off. It's like, seriously, come on. My brother's not above it now, but it goes both ways. But it's just, I spent a lot of time with that this morning about feeling like I didn't matter, and feeling like everything I was a problem, but I had to step up into roles that I wouldn't have needed to if anybody else gave a shit enough to say, oh, just because I care about you, we should have you considered this. Is this something you've looked at? Maybe we should get this done, whatever. That's not something that's happened. It's, well, I get we don't want to piss me off, supposedly, and yet my dad uses me as an insult to my brother, so that's fun. Yeah, and on that end, like, it has not been that long ago. I want to say within the past 6 weeks, my dad and I went over to my aunt's house, the one that lost her husband back in February, and I got on a tangent when I was with her and was just talking up a storm. And my dad was listening, and I think he got a little jealous that I wasn't talking to him like that. He was just there, and every now and then it's like he would throw something out there like he was trying to contribute or take over the conversation in some way to prove that he knew more about what we were talking about, kind of a stuff. But when I was talking to my aunt, I said something about the suicidal ideation and like all that big expansive time frame, and my dad chimes in with, well, your mom and I we always have your back. And I was like, bullshit, we're not gonna go there, but bullshit. It's like, you don't want to get me started on that. And there's been a whole lot of going off here in that space, or in this space, my YouTube channel, dealing with that, and I just saw 3333 as I'm talking about that. But it's like everything that gets triggered up that I really have to deal with and work through ultimately goes back to my dad. Mom and dad a lot, but I think my dad even more so. And my I don't know. My brother says, well, yesterday he said something about how our dad is when he's trying to get my mom's approval versus how he is with us. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, because I see the same butthead either way. And yeah, there's lots to that. And I've said a lot about it on here. Like the dumb bitch thing. There's been a lot to work through. And then this whole car situation. But when I was thinking about it, it was like, okay, so when I was younger, like in high school and all that stuff, It's like anytime you asked him about something, it's like you were putting him out, that he had to put forth the effort somewhere else after he'd been working and blah, 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 and he just didn't have the energy to care about anything, and it was really frustrating. One of the things I was working through this morning on that end was, how all the ways and times I've been told that I'm oversensitive or too sensitive, hypersensitive, and they got to watch how they act around me because they never know how I'm going to respond or whatever. It's like they can be assholes to me, and that's fine, but if it's something that actually matters, then it's not worth the effort. It's like, thanks. This is the whole, all my super crab. But yeah, I spent a lot of time with that this morning, and I realized that, of course, that all started because I had this good series of things that had me kind of optimistic and in a good mood, and then I went back to sleep and didn't catch myself before I started having to deal with them again, and then it just pulled me right back down to where it always does. And yeah, it sucked. So I gotta I watched a Nordic Light tarot video last night, and she was talking about the triggers come when you have something you need to work through, and they're not going to go away. You got to sit there and work through them. It's like, yep, that's where I'm at. And here we are. But it started from the freaking car, and well, it's a slow leak, so it's not a big problem, and we don't need to worry about it. We can worry about everything else and bitch about everything else, but then not. Okay. Don't woof. Hold on. Leave it. Okay. There's little kids here to play tennis. So, and they're trying to figure out where it's at. Gigi. Hi. Tess sees them. But yeah. It's like anything that might have mattered with, like investigating why I turned into a shit when I was 8 years old, and rather than just feeding into the bullying issue and have that be a whole bigger issue, because now I've just learned I can't rely on my parents either, and it's a huge thing of it, and I think, I don't know if I mentioned it in yesterday's video or one of them over the weekend, but I talked about getting made fun of because I'm so attached to my dogs, and I was thinking about that because I've always been really into my animals, basically, especially dogs, but I've had all sorts of stuff, guinea pigs, hamsters, reptiles, birds, a bunch of stuff. Cats, had those. Taz. Kindly disregard my dog farting in the background. And yes, it was my dog. But yeah, it's like how many times I've gotten made fun of in my lifetime for that. Like, my hamster that died when I was in 6th grade crushed me, and it was like my first experience with death after my great grandfather, and it was kind of devastating for me, but hearing about that, I mean, they were relatively okay on that end, but this pack is the ones that I get made fun of for the worst. And it's like, you know what? It took these 3 to make me realize that I needed to leave the situation with my ex when I did. And, I've talked about that on here before. He knew at that point that I was already getting ready to leave. I think it was like the last week or two. And he decided that I just needed to get laid and then I would stick around. And, you know, at one point he tried to force himself on me and I shoved him back really hard. And like all three dogs like jumped to my rescue. You know, I had Gidget on my chest. Taz was standing over my waist and Ziva was standing over my feet and they were just snarling at him. And, you know, that voice chimed in my head that said, they're doing their job protecting you. Now it is your job to protect them. It is time to go. And that was like, I mean, there was no turning back at that point. I mean, there was already no turning back on that one. You know, there was a day when he was trying to chase Taz around the living room to kick him. And I stood up to him and he got like really sadistic and it just was not a good spot. You know, but it was like, if it wasn't for these dogs, I honestly would have been perfectly okay if he would have just killed me. And, you know, he was at that point where he started saying shit like he saw himself getting so angry that he could see himself accidentally killing somebody someday. And it's like, I knew he was referring to me or to my dogs. And that he very much would go after the dogs just to mess with me. But, you know, when they all three were right there protecting me, it was like, it's time to go. We're done. No more. And, you know, when I wanted to completely shut down when I moved back home that last time, you know, and the family shit continued, because then I had to hear multiple choruses of my grandfather talking about how his family doesn't get divorced, and my dad watching stupid church bullshit on TV talking about how divorce is so bad. It's like, fuck you all. You know, and my mom and my grandma were really big about, no, we need you back here. And, you know, I was worried that something was going to happen. It's like, well, the problem is dealing with my family and then having that as the alternative. I didn't care. Like, if it came to that, if it wasn't for these dogs and for the fact that then they would be at his mercy, then I probably would have let him just go that far. And I wouldn't have cared because, you know, well, I mean, everything here has showed me repeatedly, you know, even now, that I still don't actually matter to these people. You know, it's just, I am useful to them to a certain extent. And if I am not allowing them to suck the life out of me, then I don't really matter, you know. And yesterday it was guilt. Well, it wasn't. It started with the grandma stuff, and then I don't even know what it was, but yes, it was a pain in the ass, and eventually it was just like, shut them up, deal with it briefly. But I was in no hurry to get over there. You know, I walked these three and walked my brothers too, and all that. You know, I was really dragging my feet about getting over there. But yeah, and then today, after I spent my morning having to deal with that, and I thought very seriously after I was still awake at 7:30 after I'd been riding for a while, I thought about, you know, getting up and messing with the hair dye and getting started on that kind of stuff. And what else? The stuff that I was looking at wanting to, there's a bunch of stuff I want to clean and organize and get rid of and just do. And it's easier to do when the family's not in the middle of everything, and it's very hard to have them not be in the middle of everything, especially when he might die at any minute. And then, mind you, rather than enjoying every minute they have with him, they're just going to sit over there and play on their phones anyway. So, and make really stupid ass decisions like, hey, he's in a fucking hospital. Let's let him bully us into trying to move him on our own. Yeah, no. And that was the last time I was around really willingly, I think. And then I watched him bully my mom and my aunt into moving him rather than calling for the nurse when we were at the fucking hospital. And yeah, and then I was, throwing F-bombs around right and left. I didn't like that. Like the nurse came in and it's like, oh, it's staff. They have staff here. Maybe we should call the staff. No, why would we do that? We could risk hurting us and him. Why is that not the natural inclination, right? That's stupid. Such is my family. So yeah, I'm very much detached since then. Well, even more so since then. It's like the more stupid things that come up, the more detached I'm getting. I did go over there today to take a bag of his prescriptions and stuff. Apparently there's some kind of med issue. They couldn't get something that he needed, but he had it at home. Whether it was in that bag or not, I don't know. Not my problem. I took it in there. There was a bunch of confusion when I went in there. My grandpa was sitting in the chair, and there was a nurse there talking to him. There were two people following me in, and my aunt and uncle were there, and my grandma was standing over by the door, and my parents, I got to the elevator, and I hit the button and was waiting on the elevator, and when the elevator doors opened, there's my parents. So they're like, oh, come to the cafeteria with us. It's like, I really don't want to carry this med stuff around any more than I have to. So I took it up to the room, and I was on my way. I went in, handed it to my aunt. There was so much going on. I turned around and walked out. And I wasn't going to go to the cafeteria either. I started walking back to the car, and then I looked at my phone, and I had a message saying, Sarah, are you still here? Grandma wants to go home or whatever. It's like, I ended up, hey, Taz. Tazzy! That was 717, so, anyway, sorry. I didn't leave. I turned around and went back to the cafeteria anyway, ended up having lunch with them. And then there was the message with my mom and my aunt going back and forth about she's wanting to leave and all this crap. So when we're done, my mom kept trying to drag me into some weird stuff. I have a cousin. She used to be my best friend when I was little. She does a lot of videos on TikTok and whatnot. Her husband died last year. And he worked a couple jobs, and she was home with the kids, so she's having to figure out that whole thing for herself. And she posts stuff on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all those things. And my mom, when she first saw that she had this other stuff going, she started sending it to me all the time or calling me in to show me things. It's like, so what? Let her do what she's going to do and just butt out of it. It literally costs nothing to just or turn your head. If you want to make fun of her, just turn the other way and ignore it. You don't have to go that route, but no, you choose to every single freaking time, and I don't remember what it was. She saw something with my cousin had done, and I just shook my head. I was like, not doing that. Of course, they don't know anything about my YouTube channel, and they would freak the fuck out if they did. But she started in on something, and I just got up and walked over and threw my trash away and said, I guess I'm going to check on my grandmother or give my grandmother a ride home or whatever. And I went upstairs, and my grandfather was starting to doze off, and I think she accidentally bumped his arm, and he's like, are you leaving? And had a freaking meltdown. So she changed her mind and decided not to. So I just turned around, walked out, and was done with all of them. sat in the car for a little while because I was sending my brother a couple of messages, and one of my friends sent her some more weird stuff. Oh, more weird stuff that happened yesterday, going along with the Twin Flame stuff. So I've mentioned that his name, his birth date, all these things seem to be following me. And while we were sitting in the little conference waiting area place, my dad sees somebody that he thought looked familiar, and he said, "Hey, you wouldn't happen to be related to this guy, would you?" And he says, "Well, it depends on which one you're talking about, because apparently there were multiple ones in that family." Hi, thank you, buddy. But they started talking, and we're leaving a minute. We're leaving a minute. I'm almost done. Hey, you want some more water? Yeah. So anyway, this guy, they have their conversation, and this guy starts going to the elevator again, and my dad's like, "Hey, what's your name?" Of course, you know what name it was. I mean, you don't really, but you know whose name it was, because it's the name that follows me. So there was that, and then I saw it on the sign when I was at a stoplight, taking a different route home than I normally do. And that's gross. You done? Hey, you done? You look up here? Yeah. Right in the eye. Anyway, the different path that I took home. Just don't lick my jacket. I hate it when he does that. The different path I went home last night, I ended up on a different road and past this address that was 1111, because of course there it is again, and I ended up on that road again today, which, I mean, today, I realized that it's easier to go south out of the hospital, since ultimately you're going to go southwest from the hospital. Normally I've been going, backtracking to the north a little bit and going down to our road from there, and it's like, but I don't have to. If I take this other route, then it'll take me to the road with the roundabout, and it's easier to get on our road. So, yeah, and then there's 1111 on the address. Oh, and another story that I was going to I meant to include yesterday was, I talked about the video that the guy mentioned 333. Firstly, okay, I saw it in the video when I hit 3333, but I also got that when it was on the odometer, 333.3. And then when I was listening to that video the other night, I was thinking about when I went up to see my friend. She's like an hour and 45 minutes away from me. So I went up that way, and on the drive up there, I saw 333 on the odometer, then on the trip mileage, and then I saw it on the car clock, which is like 5 minutes fast, and then I happened to look at my phone right when it was that time again, and then I passed it on the truck, and it was all within like a 10-minute span. It's like, that's a lot of threes in a short span of time. And there's numbers everywhere, but it's kind of funny because, like, the more I get triggered on things and, have to work through stuff like I've been dealing with the past couple of days, and kind of clearing them from my system, it's like all this other stuff is like unfolding in front of me, and it's like, I don't know what to do with this. I found out there's another musical project that he's associated with today, and it's like, oh, because of course. Why wouldn't that be there? And when I was thinking about that being the case, I saw 222 on the odometer, and then I saw 111 on the clock, and then what was the other one? 66.6 on the trip mileage, and Then when I was leaving the hospital, when I was walking out, there's a license plate that had 888 on it. It's like, yep, we just get all the numbers. That's awesome. And fours are a big one right now. And I did see 4444, but I didn't acknowledge it, but I did see it. But they're all over the place. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to call it and go feed these guys, and then I guess go try to take my brother's dogs on a little walk. I thought about skating. It's kind of chilly. It's like, the high's like 43 today. And no, it's not a big deal. And yes, I've skated after dark and when it's around that cold before. But I don't know how sold I am on it since, the little middle chunk of my day got hijacked a little bit. But yeah, here we are. Anyway, as always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see ya.